way, 1-2. We mentioned Gibson. If you were in the ballpark with binoculars, your first thought would be, late in the game, is Gibson in the Dodger dugout? And the answer would appear to be no. Got him on the inside corner. As you look, you see Fernando Valenzuela, and you're looking for Kirk Gibson. And there is no Gibson, the man who was the spearhead of the Dodger offense throughout the year, who saved them in the League Championship Series, will not see any action tonight for sure. He is not even in the dugout.
That was Vin Scully setting the stage for Game 1 of the 1988 World Series. That was the 8th inning, and Vin didn't realize it as he was setting the stage, but he set the stage in a much different way for one of the most epic home runs in Major League Baseball history. Hi, everyone. I'm Josh Suchon, and welcome to this week's edition of Crafting the Call.
And I'm Jesse Goldberg-Strassler. I was 6 years old, Josh, at the time, and this was my very first sports memory that I could ever tell you about. I distinctly remember being at the television set. The Athletics were the big bad to my mind because nobody could beat the Eck. The Eck, and you wrote it in capital letters. And here comes Kirk Gibson. And surely the Dodgers were not going to find a way to beat the dominant Athletics.
I was 15 years old that year. I went to 53 Oakland A's games. I remember that number precisely, Jesse, because every time I went to a game, I saved the ticket stub and I put it in my wallet. And as the season went along, my wallet got bigger and bigger and bigger, like the George Costanza wallet. But I saved them and I counted them. And I went to one of the games in the American League Championship Series against the Red Sox. And I was at home with my dad, right in front of the television, just inches away, as my dad was cooking dinner as we watched Game 1 of the World Series.
So here we are. It's Game 1. It's the favorite A's. It's Kirk Gibson, who was there even going to be a chance for him to participate? And as it turns out, this is his only at-bat in the World Series. Meanwhile, the A's are looking to return to glory for the first time since they had won the 3 consecutive World Series titles in the 1970s. What I love is, with you and I, as we discuss crafting the call, there are some great calls of this. And perhaps you know Vin Scully's call. But there's Jack Buck on the national radio call as well, and some other calls that you found.
Yeah, I can't wait so that we can really look into how 4 legendary play-by-play announcers handled, again, one of the most iconic moments in baseball history. So let's get to it. So we're going to save Vin for last, because if you're watching this, you've probably heard Vin. You've maybe heard Jack Buck. It's doubtful you've heard the Dodgers broadcast or the A's broadcast. But let's go ahead and start, Jesse, with the national radio call. Jack Buck, the son of Joe, is on national radio for CBS. Bill White is doing the color commentary. Bill White, longtime major leaguer. He was a GM for the Yankees. He was the National League president at one point, borderline Hall of Fame career. I think he should be in the Hall of Fame. Nonetheless, let's get to Jack Buck and Bill White for the national call of this.
Gibson, tying run at first, 2 out. Throw to first, the runner gets back. The A's are leading 4-3, bottom of the 9th. 55,000 plus for the first game of this 88 series. Gibson will get back in with a 2-2 count, and sooner or later, Eckersley's going to have to come to him again. He had a 2-strike count, now it's 2-2. The right-hander is ready. Here it comes, the runner going, it's outside, no throw, stolen base, tying run at second. 2 out and 3-2 on Gibson.
All right, I'm going to pause it here, Jesse. Give me your thoughts on what Jack has done so far in the 35 or so seconds we've been listening.
Well, the whole idea of the reset, the whole idea of if you just turned on your radio right now, first 55,000 plus. So we understand the atmosphere and we understand the moment, and Gibson, Eckersley is going to have to come to him. Meanwhile, we've got the whole situation. Dodgers are down by a run. Now that potential tying run is in scoring position. It is such a marvelous painting of the entire picture at hand. How about you?
Well, again, as someone who grew up as an A's fan, 1987, Mike Davis had a fabulous year for the A's. I remember thinking he got robbed. He should have been in the 1987 All-Star game. He goes to the Dodgers. He gets hurt at the end of spring training. He has this terrible season. He barely plays. Mike Davis comes to the plate with 2 outs and nobody on. But I'm not thinking about Mike Davis, the guy who struggled in 88. As an A's fan, I'm thinking about the Mike Davis who was nearly an All-Star in 87. And so did Eckersley. And so did catcher Ron Hassey. And Davis walks, which was very uncharacteristic of Eckersley throughout his career. Then he steals second. So in my mind, and this is what Jack Buck has just described, now you've got the tying run at second base. And now, okay, it's still the furthest thing from my head is that there's going to be a home run. All I'm thinking is Eckersley's going to keep going away, and Gibson's just going to flick his wrist and poke one into left and might tie the game.
Well, let's stay on that walk. Because simply in discussing baseball strategy, as you say, Eckersley in 1988 walked 11 batters, and 2 of them were intentional. So on this 3-2, chances are it's going to be in the strike zone. Is right now a good time to simply give the Mel Didier scattering report story? Do you know this story?
Let's wait. We'll do it in about 40 seconds or so. Here we go.
Okay.
You said it, Bill White. Eckersley doesn't hold him close.
Doesn't hold him close, Jack. And if Davis ran on 1 ball, 2 strikes, you figure he's got to go on 2-2. That pitch was away and an easy stolen base for Davis.
And now an easier opportunity to tie this game if Gibson can solve the Dennis Eckersley, who saved 45 games for the A's this year. He's trying to save it for Dave Stewart. Mike Davis at second base with 2 out. 3-2 to Gibson. A base hit would tie it. A home run would win it for the Dodgers. If Gibson gets on, Sachs comes up from the stretch. Time called by Gibson.
Okay, so once again, Buck has done a marvelous job. A base hit would tie it. A home run would win it. Gibson calls time. Gibson has told this story almost 1 million times by now, that when he called time, he remembered that Dodger scout Mel Didier had said in the scouting report, partner, sure as the sun's going to rise tomorrow, if it gets to 3-2, Dennis Eckersley is going to throw a backdoor slider. This is what Gibson is thinking about right now. However, Jesse, shameless plug, I wrote a book about the 1988 Dodgers, Miracle Men. And fortunately for me, the first year that baseballreference.com has pitch-by-pitch breakdown is 1988. So I was able to go back to see how many times did Dennis Eckersley actually go to a 3-2 count the entire season. Now, Baseball Reference is not going to tell us what pitch he threw, but it is going to tell us how many times he did it. You want to take a guess how many times during the season Dennis Eckersley had a 3-2 count?
I'll say 12 times.
8. He had 8 times. 4 were in the first half of the season. 4 were in the second half of the season. The point is, Mel Didier's grand prediction was based off the smallest of small sample sizes.
Works out. And it's a backdoor slider. I've met Mel Didier because when my squad that I call games for in Lansing, he comes in representing the Toronto Blue Jays. And so he is so glad to tell his Podna stories. Back to Jack Buck. Jack Buck has such a distinctive voice. His voice that grinds its way right through that crowd noise. It's such a beautiful, not velvet voice, right? It's a voice that has just been, I think of it being carved out of wood. It is down home. He is talking right to you at the same time he's picking the brain of Bill White, who, by the way, was the first ever Black play-by-play broadcaster in Major League Baseball history. And he's breaking down every little thing. He's picking at the Eckersley-Gibson matchup. He's looking at 3-2. He's looking at that potential game-tying run at second base. He's saying first base is open. He's looking at Steve Sachs being on deck. He's looking at all of this. All at the same time. He's not letting the moment escape him, and he's staying in front of everything.
All right, let's get back to it.
And if he does get on, that would make Lasorda make another decision. He'd have to use a base runner because he doesn't want that force at second base.
Yeah, he would run for Gibson and have Sachs batting. But we have a big 3-2 pitch coming here from Eckersley. Gibson swings and a fly ball to deep right field. This is going to be a home run. Unbelievable! unbelievable. A home run for Gibson. And the Dodgers have won the game 5-4. I don't believe what I just saw. I don't believe what I just saw. Is this really happening, Bill?
It is happening, and they've got to help him home. The third base coach, Joe Malfitano, had to give him a little push, and all the Dodgers are around home plate.
I don't believe what I just saw. One of the most remarkable finishes to any World Series game. A one-handed home run by Kirk Gibson, and the Dodgers have won it 5-4. And I am stunned, Bill. I have seen a lot of dramatic finishes in a lot of sports, but this one might top almost every other one.
It was a moment that we have never seen before, and the Athletics, they were obviously stunned too, Jack Buck. They're gone, and they've got their heads down.
How could he do it? Kirk Gibson, Trans-America salutes you.
Okay, I want to go back to one other thing that Jack does. And as I'm scrolling back here, I want you to explain to the audience, Jesse, what we in the business call the Joe Buck cheat. What is the Joe Buck cheat?
It's where you say the player's name right before the action. I had no idea that this cheat was happening at this time. Just listen for him to say Gibson before the action ensues.
Yeah, so when I took the radio call and matched it up with the TV call, I'm not the greatest editor. It's pretty close, but it's slightly off. And so you're going to hear the Jack Buck cheat that Joe learned from his dad.
Here from Eckersley. Gibson swings and a fly ball to deep right field. This is going to be a home run. Unbelievable! A home run for Gibson. And the Dodgers have won the game 5-4. I don't believe what I just saw. I don't believe what I just saw.
A Hall of Fame announcer with a legendary call from the national perspective, Jesse.
There are a couple of rules that are broken here. If you or I is calling something big in radio, I think, number one, we want to be descriptive. Description goes out the window as Jack continues broadcasting. And it's all him trying to speak through his speechlessness, him trying to find words for the indescribable, and just expressing his sheer raw emotions in this moment. So the first thing is, forget the description, and it's Jack being raw and real. The second thing is, there's no letting things breathe. So there's none of that vivid description. There's none of Jack sitting back and letting the crowd noise take over. It's just him marveling at how magnificent this moment is.
On the other hand, there is another broadcaster who absolutely, positively let the broadcast breathe, who let the audience tell the story. So let's now go to Dodgers radio. So if you are not in front of your television set, and remember, there's no internet in 1988, and you're listening in the car, or if you are among the thousands of people who left the game early, you are listening to Dodgers radio, and former pitcher Don Drysdale, who became an extremely good play-by-play announcer, is on the call because Vin is doing national TV. So let's get to Don Drysdale.
We're in the bottom of the ninth inning, and the A's lead by a score of 4-3. The tying run, standing at first baseman Mike Davis. Kirk Gibson hitting for Pena. Eckersley sets. There goes Davis. The pitch is way outside and no throw. So the Dodgers put the tying run in scoring position, and now Eckersley wants to talk to Hasse. Hasse saying something to the home plate umpire, Doug Harvey. Hasse saying Gibson, I think, interfered, and Doug Harvey said no, he did not interfere, and now Eckersley and Hasse want to have a chat.
By the way, as an A's fan, I was yelling at the television set as a 15-year-old, interference, interference, end the game on the interference there. But Doug Harvey, imagine if Doug Harvey had made that call in that moment.
What are you thinking looking back at it now?
Exactly. All right, let's get back to it.
So that doesn't take long. Now Davis standing at second. A full count to Gibson. 3 balls and 2 strikes, and the crowd on their feet. And Gibson calls time and backs out. So the battle of minds starts to work a little bit. Gibson a deep side. Re-gripping the bat. Shoulders just shrugged. Now goes to the top of the helmet as he always does. Steps in with that left foot.
I love the descriptions there. He goes back to fundamentals, how he steps in, puts his hand on his helmet, shrugs the shoulders. I love that even in a big moment, Drysdale was painting the picture for those who are in their car driving home from the game.
Well, the other broadcasters that you and I are going to break down and listen to, they came at it from the broadcasting side. Don Drysdale has not yet been broadcasting baseball for 2 full decades. He started in 1970. He's the pitcher. You would figure that he would come at it from the player versus player side, what's going on inside their heads. And instead, no, it very much is about painting that visual image.
Basically, Drysdale learned from Scully because he sat next to him for all those years. All right, we know what's going to happen, but this is a call, again, this final moment, Drysdale calling this. He does something that he never did his entire career. And this is a call that most people have never heard.
Eckersley working out of the stretch. Here's the 3-2 pitch and a drive into right field. Way back! It's ball! It's ball!
He's not going to say anything for a while here, so I'm going to jump in, Jesse, that he loses his voice. Way back, he becomes a teenager going through puberty there.
With Jack Buck, we heard him go through the same thing of understanding midway through the call that it was going to be a home run. And you could hear with Jack, the voice jumped up with, this is going to be a home run. With Don going from the drive into way back, the very second he realized what is going to happen, I admire that he's able to flow, this ball is gone, and able to sit back in that moment when, more than the other broadcast team that we just saw, his emotions are off the charts.
He still hasn't said a word. He goes 1 minute and 55 seconds without saying a word.
Picture him sitting back, smile on his face, maybe pumping his fist. Right? What is he doing? What is he feeling in this moment?
I love how the PR person's trying to get Gibson for an interview, and he's blowing him off right here.
I mean, Gibby's Gibby.
Here's another thing I want people to watch. Oh, we're not going to see it from this angle. We'll see it from a different angle. We'll get to it then. By the way, the director for NBC, the late Harry Coyle, it was his final World Series, and it was an epic performance by the director.
Look at these camera shots. Foreground, background.
They can't believe the ending. And this time, Whitey Casey did not strike out.
Okay, I'm going to go back here because, you know, Dodger fans always get this, you know, reputation for arriving late, leaving early. And I think one of the reasons why is because of just the layout of Dodger Stadium. And so you see the cars who are leaving.
Here's the 3-2 pitch and a drive into right field. Way back.
And you can see the brakes. There's a car that's leaving that is slamming on the brakes because they hear Drysdale in this moment and they realized we missed it, Jesse.
It's marvelous. It's such a great shot. And you know they can hear the roar of the crowd behind them too. Josh, you know what I love about this call is if I didn't know this was Don Drysdale, we could take this call today and I think you could teach it. You could say the fundamentals of this are exactly what we would want to see and hear from a broadcaster. Describe what is happening, set the scene, describe visually what you see, and then with the call itself, right, say more with less, and then get out, let the moment breathe, summarize it all at the end. This is a fundamentally sound broadcasted call.
Again, Drysdale went 1 minute and 55 seconds without saying a word. Then when he started to talk again, he didn't talk for very long. He went another 52 seconds without saying a word, said a few more things, then went another 19 seconds without saying a word. So he went over 3 minutes within about a 4.5 minute stretch of not saying a word because the crowd was telling the story. And this is what you do as the Dodgers announcer. You wouldn't want to do this if you're the A's announcer, but this captures the moment on radio for the Dodgers audience.
I love that idea that he learned from Vin, and that in that moment he thought of Vin, and Vin prioritizing letting the crowd be heard and not fighting them. Jack Buck and Bill White talk the entire time after the home run. We do not hear the crowd. It's just the crowd underneath them. And there's Don sitting back because he knows there's pandemonium in that stadium, and he knows there's pandemonium wherever people can hear his call.
All right, so there's another one that we're going to get to now. And this is the call that has been like my holy grail that I've been trying to find for about 15 years. And I was finally able to find the right person who had a copy of it and was able to send it. And this is the legendary Bill King, who is now part of the Hall of Fame, the Frick Award for his broadcasting excellence. I literally listened to Bill King more than any other adult in my life. He did the Raiders, he did the Warriors, he did the A's. He was the ultimate guy who had no desire to be on the national stage. He only wanted to be a local broadcaster. At one point, he did all three of the East Bay teams at the same time. And so this is Bill King on the call in the 9th inning, and we're just going to get right to the very end here with Bill.
Eck has not thrown that slider. Swung on, drive, right field, deep, way back, gone! Gibson has won it with a home run into the right field pavilion, and the Dodgers have won the first game of the World Series. Gibson greeted by the entire Dodger roster at home plate. The hobbled hero battling Eckersley to 3-2, and then launching a shot into the right field pavilion between the 360 and 370 marks. A devastating blow with the A's one strike from victory. And the Dodgers continue what Lasorda has been labeling the miracle performance. Gibson is mobbed and gets a big kiss from Lasorda. And the A's have been thrown a challenge here tonight. One that they have to come back to tomorrow and encounter Oral Hershiser. What an incredible finish at Dodger Stadium.
Okay, so a couple of things stand out to me on this one here. Bill King was a firm believer that you broadcast the game and you're not a homer. He wanted to make sure that the moment spoke for itself, even if it was the A's losing the game. And this was very much inbred in him and bred in all of the Bay Area announcers. And I think that comes from being a market where there's two teams, where not everybody who is listening is going to be a fan. And so you wouldn't know off the top of your head that this was the A's announcer. He let it breathe a little bit and he captured the moment. And then he also said what all Oakland A's fans were thinking, including 15-year-old Josh. Oral Hershiser is starting tomorrow. And that's what made that home run so devastating, because it was almost a guaranteed win at that point when Hershiser was on the mound.
I want to go back to the very start, because the rule that gets broken here per se is he doesn't necessarily get in front of the pitch. He mentions that Eck has not thrown the slider. And then the next thing you hear is the crack of the bat and the swing and the result. But this is in itself an indication of how well he's got the pulse of the A's, because here's the slider. Eck hasn't thrown it. At one point, Eck has thrown nothing but fastballs the entire inning. And so what was it at one point? 14 consecutive fastballs or thereabouts. And so Eck hasn't thrown the slider. Here's the slider. Here's what happens. Immediately, we've got the description, the right field pavilion. We've got him lay out to let the crowd take over. And then we've got the summation. Here's the call once again, right? You and I, we describe things in the moment. And then once things have had the chance to calm down, then we go back and we re-describe. And we say, here's where the ball went. And he tells you exactly where that ball went. And he tells you exactly what's happening on the field. The whole roster is at home plate. And here's the kiss from Lasorda. And he relates it. He says, he quotes Tommy Lasorda in terms of the miracle. There is so much that he is the presence of mind in this devastating moment for anyone who cares about the A's. To sum it all up, to say, here's what just happened. And then, as you say, and here's what's coming up next. It is such marvelous presence of mind that I come back to in this. And there's chaos here. This is one of the most dramatic, unexpected moments in baseball history. And there's Bill on top of it. And there's Bill looking ahead.
By this point in his career, he was already an institution in the Bay Area, because you go to the Pro Football Hall of Fame and all of these legendary calls for the Raiders, the Sea of Hands, the Holy Roller, the Ghost of the Post, Old Man Willie, that's Bill King. And so he had the immaculate reception as well. He knew what it was like to be on the losing end for your employer when that happens. And so this is Bill summoning a lifetime worth of work. And I think it's a fabulous call. It would be very easy for an announcer to do something like, deep fly ball to right field and, oh, it's gone, but he was not going to do that because he's a pro's pro.
We could hear his disappointment. I mean, I can hear that disappointment as that ball goes over the wall, but it's subtle. Here's the quick trivia question for you. Who is older, King or Vin Scully?
Ooh, that's a really good question. And Bill King was famous for never wanting people to know his age and not wanting to say his age, and just thought it doesn't matter what my age is. So I don't know. Perhaps you know the answer better than me, Jesse.
I think King was 2 months older.
That's it.
I think that they are both. King was early October of 1927, I believe, and Vin Scully was late November of 1927. These are contemporaries. And Jack Buck is 1924, so he's only 3 years older than both of them. So you've got these guys in their early 60s who have been broadcasting ever since they were young, ever since they were in their early 20s. And now here we are, 3 decades down the road for every one of them. So they have all honed their art entirely differently. And it's so fascinating for me to see. As we saw with Jack Buck, it's all about that down-home honesty. It's all about let me tell you what I'm feeling in this moment. Bill King took such a completely different tact. And here's Don Drysdale describing Gibson, describing Eckersley, and then laying out, because it's the Dodgers call. So listen to the Dodgers fans. I really enjoyed the approach that Bill took to one of the worst moments in Oakland athletics franchise history.
Okay, so we've heard 3 calls, and all 3 of those were radio. And let's now once again go back to Vin Scully on television after we've heard these 3 radio calls, and look back once again on something that we've heard and see how Vin used the images on the screen to enhance his call.
If he gets on, we're going to hear some roar.
3-1. And he walked him. And look who's coming up.
I'm pausing it right away, because by this point, the dugout has shown that the camera has shown that Gibson's in the dugout. He's wearing a helmet. He's got a bat in hands. We know that he's going to hit if the inning continues. Garagiola, that's Joe Garagiola we're going to hear some kind of roar if he gets on. And then I just love the simplicity of Vin saying, and look who's coming up. and then he lays out. And again, Vin, he's just totally laying out right here.
Who needs words? The picture is telling the story.
And Eckersley has later said it drove him nuts.
All year long, they looked to him to light the fire, and all year long, he answered the demands until he was physically unable to start tonight with two bad legs, the bad left hamstring and the swollen right knee. And with two out, you talk about a roll of the dice. This is it. If he hits the ball on the ground, I would have.
Okay, so I'm going to mute this, and we'll let it continue to play out, Jesse, as we talk about a couple of things.
By the way, how great was that note on the screen that Eckersley had not allowed a home run since late August?
Exactly. Yes. So we're going to see Gibson foul off pitches. It got to 0-2, and then there was later a little roller up the first base line that goes foul. A couple of things from a strategic standpoint here that I've always thought have kind of been forgotten by history. Tommy Lasorda made the decision to pinch hit Mike Davis. If Gibson was available and you left him on the bench, it worked out brilliantly because Mike Davis did get on with the walk and he stole second. But the roll of the dice to not use Gibson first, he went Mike Davis as a pinch hitter and then Gibson, also indicates that, number one, Lasorda didn't know what he had, what Gibson could give him. And also, no one's thinking home run. They're just hoping he can get the bat on the ball.
That's right. I mean, tying run is now on base. You've got the top of the order waiting to bat next. This is batting in the pitcher's spot. It's fascinating as you put it, because yes, it's not sending up Kirk Gibson after the first two batters have been retired. So it's 2 outs, nobody on, and you're just throwing up a Hail Mary.
A couple of other things as the at-bat continues here. Back in 1988, it was a 24-man roster, and you could not replace injured players once the postseason began. So the roll of the dice of the Dodgers, when I went back on newspapers.com and read all of the stories from the end of the championship series to the start of the World Series, even though Gibson was hobbled badly and in pain, everyone just assumed he was going to play. Even the morning of game one, Tommy Lasorda just thought he'll find a way to make himself available to be in the lineup. And Lasorda was stunned when the trainers told him, no, Gibson is not available. So you're talking about a 24-man roster, and you're going to put Gibson on there, even though he may not be able to play the entire series. That was a roll of the dice.
Boy, can you imagine if McGuire had attacked that and not let it go foul right there? So the media meets with Tommy Lasorda before the game. And so you know that everybody's talking. And so when we saw that shot earlier and they're going through the dugout and they're saying Gibson isn't there, and so you're trying to relate, where is Kirk Gibson? Yes, there is that expectation. All right, here's your big Dodger hero. Where is he? They need him. There's a story that's going to be written if the Dodgers lose this game. Kirk Gibson did not play. What happened?
And as we know now, where was Kirk Gibson? He was in the trainer's room, icing his legs, when he heard Vin Scully say in the 8th inning, Gibson's not available. That's what inspired him to get off the trainer's table. He started to take some swings. Mitch Poole, the bat boy at the time, still with the Dodgers as a longtime equipment manager now, was placing the baseballs on the tee as he was taking swings. Gibson didn't want to come out to the dugout too soon, the element of surprise. And so we had Mitch Poole go out to Lasorda in the dugout and says, Gibson's available. You know, he can give you an at bat. And so all of this drama is taking place behind the scenes underneath Dodger Stadium between the bottom of the 8th inning and the top of the 9th inning. And Gibson has later said that he basically told himself, once they announce you, the crowd is going to make so much noise that you will not feel any more pain anymore.
Jack Buck, we didn't listen to this. Jack Buck during the at-bat gives the Gibson bio and tells about his football playing career. talks about him at Michigan State and getting drafted by the Cardinals in the NFL. And so there's very much about who he is as a person. For Vin, right from the very start, it is that health. It is, here's how much they've relied on him, but what can he do right now in this moment? And the story of this moment and the story of his body against the great Eck.
Couple more notes as this inning plays out. Yeah. Kirk Gibson was with the Tigers in 1987. The Dodgers and Tigers talked about a potential trade, Pedro Guerrero for Kirk Gibson. It did not materialize, then became the collusion ruling that made Kirk Gibson a free agent. The Dodgers sign him. Gibson sets the tone in spring training when Jesse Orosco plays a prank on him, puts pine tar in his glove, and he explodes and goes ballistic and says, "You guys joke around. This is why you guys lose. I'm here to kick some butt." And here he is. And let's get back to the volume for the rest of this at bat.
I'm so glad I'm taking this in with you.
Now the Dodgers don't need the muscle of Gibson as much as a base hit. And on deck is the leadoff man, Steve Sax. 3-2.
This entire at bat lasted over 9 minutes.
Sax waiting on deck, but the game right now is at the plate. High fly ball into right field. She is gone.
This is a really long layout too.
But when he comes back, he has the right words to say.
In a year that has been so improbable, the impossible has happened.
I asked Vin about that line when I was writing my book, about where did that line come from? And Vin, a very religious man, said that he had never thought of that line before in his life. He never said it before. He never said it again. He said, it just came to me. And what a perfect description after a long layout. In a year that has been so improbable, the impossible has happened.
So Don Drysdale is calling a home run, and then he lays out, but it's wild. It's this incredible moment. And so he loses himself, and then he sits back and he watches. And the mighty Casey doesn't strike out is what comes to Don, right? This is the great baseball archetype, the mighty slugger. And in this moment, the mighty Casey came through. Bill King is approaching it and saying, within the frame of this World Series, number one, this was the Dodgers' hero, and now the A's are up against it. And then you've got the contemporaries on the national calls. And I would argue that what Vin said and what Jack said are two peas in a pod. But Jack went personal. Jack said, I don't believe what I just saw. Out of everything that you could have possibly told me was going to happen, this was not one of those things. And Vin is saying the exact same thing. Vin is saying this is impossible. There's no way. But unlike Jack, who personalized it and said, here's what I'm thinking right now. My mind is blown. I don't believe it. This is unbelievable. Vin turns it to poetry.
That expression, she is gone. Vin uses the word she a lot to describe baseball. And again, I was very fortunate enough to get to spend some time with Vin, and I asked him, what was it about using the word she? And Vin said that it basically goes back to naval terminology, that a
Yes.
boat is known as a female, that she is a boat, that often there would be a boat off on the horizon, and then it would disappear once it gets further, that she is gone. The boat is gone. The boat is leaving the dock. The boat is no longer within your eyesight. She is gone. And he said that he's just kept up that naval maritime type of vocabulary. And that's where the female is in that she is gone description.
It makes it more meaningful, doesn't it? The she for a boat gives the sailor, gives the person on that boat, gives them greater connection to it. And so in this moment, it gives you greater connection to the ball than saying it's gone. That depersonalizes the ball. And off we go back to the home run. The ball, it's gone. Don't even worry about it anymore. There's just so much more weight given to it. With that word, you think more about the ball and you think more about the moment.
And again, I just think about everything that we see, the director, how the director shows the flight of the ball, the zoom in, Gibson, Lasorda, the A's, Eckersley, Gibson, right? I mean, the director, Harry, was just fabulous. And Garagiola, who I think is underrated for how good he was as an analyst, he understood that Vin was the star. And I'm going to chime in every once in a while, but in a moment like that, Joe also laid out. It'd be very easy for an analyst to suddenly say, like, I have to say something. Garagiola understood the moment as well. He laid out, or maybe the director just cut both of their mics. I doubt that. But again, I just think that this is the elite of the elite at their best and one of the most iconic moments in baseball history.
Joe, I think of him being the comic. He was the wit. He was there to provide levity when the moment demanded it. And he was such a great X's and O's guy. He had the mind for it. So he could say, here's this technique on this play. Here's what this person is thinking. And that's not what this moment demands. So instead, what you've got is a moment that I think my 6-year-old self was right. My 6-year-old self did not believe that this was a possibility, that you couldn't beat the Eck, that Kirk Gibson's body was not capable of this, and that the greatest thing that you could imagine in this moment was a game-tying single, and then off we went into extra innings and we saw what happened there. But Eckersley didn't blow saves. I mean, really, Vin Scully, if you look back at it, he's expecting a walk. He's saying if anything happens right now, you just put Gibson on at first base, and we've got to think about Steve Sex. And then quickly he rights himself, and he says, what am I doing? I can't get ahead of myself. The game is at the plate. Let's see what happens on this pitch.
I love that phrase. The game is at the plate. I've stolen that. There's a lot of things that I've stolen from Vin, and that's one of them. But the game is at the plate.
It's so classic that this moment, which I think nobody argues is one of the top 5 home runs in baseball history, happens in game 1 of a World Series. Right? There's Gibson's only at bat of the whole World Series. And then the World Series continues from there. The Dodgers had to keep on winning games. It was fun. It was wild. And then the very next year, the A's go out and sweep the Giants and the earthquake. And then the year after that, the Reds come out and sweep the A's. There was all sorts of unexpected rises and falls, but you can't point to very many home runs that don't outright win series that are this special. And whether you come to a Mazeroski or a Joe Carter where it ends the series, or Bobby Thompson where it catapults you into the World Series, Aaron Boone, this is just game 1. Bill King is pointing out, look, Oral Hershiser is going to game 2. Bill King is the person who's going, we got a series to go, everybody. And everybody else is saying, what a freaking moment. That's why I really enjoy listening to the words that are used and the words that are not used. It is so fascinating to me that Jack Buck is up there in the Pantheon with, I don't believe what I just saw. Just like his go crazy, right? Go crazy, folks, go crazy. It's Jack, it's the honesty of him sitting there with you and talking right to you. Vin, it's the poetically putting this right in and saying, listen, here is the importance summed up in this sentence. In a year that has been so improbable, the impossible has happened. That's why I enjoy sitting with you, because I get transported to being a fan, but you've put in the work to supply all the context that we have here.
Two quick things before we wrap it up. Number one, I think that Bill King's background in football and basketball, which is what he did first, shined through in that moment because there is an intensity to his voice, and that's an intensity that comes from his background doing football and basketball. Second point, Jesse, is Mel Didier, to put a bow on the story about the scouting report. Mel rushed down to the clubhouse and told Gibson and everybody else, don't tell the press we knew what was coming. We might need that again. So he reminded them. It wasn't until after the series had ended did the story come out about the scouting report, which, by the way, is not some old wives' tale. Tim Leary gave me his copies of every single scouting report for every player on the A's, and sure enough, it says that. And again, it was on the smallest of small sample sizes that Mel Didier was so confident in this, and he wanted to make sure that in case they needed it, they'd have another opportunity.
It's so good. It's so good. And I can picture his accent because he's one of the great storytellers there is. Podna. I appreciate Mel. And in that moment that Gibson was ready, that he took that time to reset and remember, and delivered that backdoor slider.
All right. This is super fun. It was a painful memory for me as a 15-year-old. I was absolutely devastated. Since then, I've written a book about the team that broke my favorite team's heart when I was 15 years old. And I love being able to look back on this moment now as an adult, as a professional, and being able to analyze how those four legends crafted their calls of Gibson's homer from Game 1 of the 1988 World Series.
Yeah, I appreciate that we can talk about the craft. I think that this helped make me a baseball fan because this helped show a young me on the next pitch something magical could happen. So I appreciate us taking this time.
Once again, he's Jesse. I'm Josh. This is Crafting the Call. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll talk to you again next week.